Let's talk about something that the automotive industry, the federal government, and about a dozen corporate boardrooms are hoping you never put together. They took your V8. Not because they had to, not because the planet demanded it, not because some regulator in Washington, D.C. woke up one morning and decided the working man's truck was the enemy of clean air. They took it because a turbocharged inline six costs less to build, looks better on a spreadsheet, made it easier for them to keep selling you a $60,000 truck, while quietly paying someone else to take on the burden of all that new environmental mandate. I'm going to show you exactly who they paid, exactly how much they paid them, and exactly how much of that bill you covered without ever knowing you signed off on it. You know, years ago I started my first business behind the wheel of a truck with a V8, like pretty much everybody else in this country did back then. Not because there was some sort of bromance about it, because it worked, because it's just what you did. Because when something went wrong with it, I could fix it. And I could fix it without a laptop, a Wi-Fi connection, and a paid subscription to GM's magic online diagnostic toolbox, the one you'll need in about 3 years, just to reset your own check engine light, change your oil. Trust me, give it time. Because back then, at 200,000 miles, it still had another 100,000 in it, if you maintained it right. Some of them went 500,000 and never looked back. That engine isn't gone because technology got better, please. It's gone because someone ran the numbers and decided their profit margins were more important than practicality and your reliability. So when they needed public cover for that decision, when they needed a reason that sounded bigger than profit, they pointed at Washington, D.C., the climate change movement, and said the government made us do it. Genius move, if you think about it. Bottom line, they didn't. Washington, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, I guess, gave them all kinds of workarounds. And I can prove it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so here's how this actually works because the manufacturers are counting on you not knowing. CAFE, Corporate Average Fuel Economy, been around since 1975, but the version that changed everything, the version that gave every manufacturer in America the excuse they needed, came out of Washington in 2012. The Obama administration mandated a fleet average of 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. Annual reductions of 8% starting in 2023, jumping to 11% per year from 2027 through 2032. And the everyday Joe heard about this in the form of a press release that basically said the V8 was going away. But here's the word nobody explained to you: fleet average, not individual vehicles. The average across everything a manufacturer sells in a given year, which means a Ford Raptor R with a supercharged 5.2-liter V8 getting 15 miles per gallon is perfectly legal, as long as enough Mavericks and Mustang Mach-E's drag the fleet numbers back into compliance. So really, the EPA didn't mandate the end of the V8. The manufacturers chose what to do with the math. And there's one more thing that they didn't bother to tell you. Your one-ton work truck, your F450, your Ram 3500, your Silverado HD, and the heavier configuration, vehicles over 8,500 pounds gross vehicle weight rating, operate under a completely separate medium-duty standard, far less stringent, of course. The mandate they blamed for gutting your powertrain options on a heavy-duty work truck doesn't even apply to that weight class. So the excuse falls apart before you finish reading it. Now, here's where it gets personal. Because while Ford, GM, and Stellantis were standing in front of cameras telling you the government forced their hand, while they were announcing the end of the Hemi, retiring the naturally aspirated V8, replacing proven powertrains with turbocharged engines that had never seen a hard day's work, they were out there writing checks. Big ones. Oh, yeah, to Elon Musk. You see, the way cafe compliance actually works in practice is through a credit system. Sound familiar? Manufacturers who can't hit the fleet average on their own can purchase regulatory credits from manufacturers who have a surplus. Tesla, which makes nothing but electric vehicles and therefore generates credits it really has no use for, became the largest supplier of those credits in the country. Ford bought them. GM bought them. Stellantis bought them. Fun little factoid, over the last decade, Tesla collected $11.8 billion selling regulatory credits to the same manufacturers who told the working man the V8 had to go for the good of the environment. In 2024 alone, 1 year, 43% of Tesla's entire net income came from credits purchased by traditional manufacturers, $2.67 billion in a single year, paid by the companies that make your truck, which means every time you made a payment on that $60,000 rig every month for 72 months, you were indirectly funding the transaction that replaced your V8 with a turbo inline 6 and called it progress. You know what that is, right? That's the Hollywood actor flying a private jet to a climate conference to lecture you about your carbon footprint. Same energy, different zip code. The manufacturers weren't cleaning up their act. They were paying someone else to look like they were, while they kept building whatever was most profitable. And what was most profitable definitely wasn't the V8. Let's talk about what actually replaced it, because this is where the argument stops being about politics and environmental policy and starts being about your wallet. A naturally aspirated V8, iron block, wide tolerances, proven architecture, costs more to manufacture per unit than a small displacement twin turbocharged engine. The raw material costs more. The machining is more complex. The tooling investment is higher. None of that translates into a cheaper truck for you. All of it translates into a better margin for them. A turbocharged inline 6 with an aluminum block is lighter, cheaper to produce at scale once the tooling is established, generates horsepower numbers on paper that look spectacular in a brochure. 420 horsepower from a 3.0-liter engine sounds like engineering progress. What it actually is a smaller, cheaper to build component producing stress levels that a naturally aspirated engine running the same application never encountered, because it never had to spin a turbocharger at 150,000 RPM to make its power numbers. And then there's the cylinder deactivation systems layered on top. GM calls theirs dynamic fuel management. Ram calls theirs multi-displacement system. Different names, same concept. Engineered specifically to hit compliance numbers on paper by shutting down cylinders under light load, which sounds efficient until you understand what it does to the valve train components managing those deactivated cylinders over 60,000 miles of real use. We'll get into exactly what it does and exactly what it costs in the next video. What matters right now is this. These systems weren't engineered because they made a better engine. They were engineered because they made a better compliance number. The working man got the compliance number, the manufacturer got the credit, and when the components, those systems stressed, start failing at 50 and 60,000 miles, when the tick turns into a knock, and the knock turns into a shop bill, the manufacturer pointed at the warranty expiration date and called it a coincidence. It was certainly not a coincidence. So if you still have any doubt about whether any of this was ever genuinely about environmental responsibility, here's the moment that I remove all of that. In 2025, the big beautiful bill passed and eliminated the federal penalties for failing to meet CAFE standards. The fines went away. And the moment the fines went away, the manufacturers stopped buying Tesla's credits almost immediately. The credit market collapsed, of course. Tesla's regulatory revenue, that $2.67 billion annual stream, dried up because the financial incentive to maintain the appearance of compliance disappeared, along with the penalties. If these companies had genuine environmental commitments, they would have kept buying. The planet didn't change in 2025, the regulations didn't change, the math on emissions didn't change. The only thing that changed was whether there was a financial consequence for non-compliance. They stopped the second it stopped costing them not to. That's not environmental stewardship. That's a line item on a balance sheet that got removed, and the working man who was told his V8 was an environmental casualty, who was handed a twin-turbo engine with a 5-year warranty and a $65,000 price tag, never got an explanation, never got an apology, never got a phone call saying, actually, it turns out we could have kept building it. We just didn't want to.
I want to be precise about something before we go any further. The CAFE standards, they're real. The pressure to improve fleet fuel economy is documented, and it has tightened every year since 2012. This isn't an argument that regulation doesn't exist or that fuel economy doesn't matter. This is an argument that the manufacturers used a real regulatory framework as public cover for decisions that were primarily driven by cost reduction, margin improvement, and the cheapest available path to paper compliance. And the proof isn't opinion. It's in the fleet averaging math that lets a $113,000 Raptor R exist while the base $30,000 V8 disappears. It's in the heavy-duty exemptions that didn't apply to the trucks they claimed were affected. It's in the $11.8 billion they paid Tesla over 10 years to handle the environmental paperwork, while they kept building whatever the hell was most profitable. The regulation was real. The excuse was not. And next week, we're going to go through what happens after the sale. Brand by brand, failure by failure, Denali by Denali. The warranty stories that should make every person watching this genuinely angry. Not at the political parties, not at a regulation, but at specific corporate decisions made by specific people who knew exactly what the hell they were doing and did it anyways. That video is going to make this one feel like a warm-up.
So let's put a number on it, because this channel runs on numbers, or at least we're trying to, right? The average transaction price for a new full-size pickup truck in America right now is $58,000. 5 years ago, it was $43,000. The powertrain under the hood is significantly cheaper to build than the ones it replaced. The warranty, for the most part, covering it is the same 5-year and 60,000 miles it's always been. In some cases shorter relative to the complexity of what's being warranted, though I am hearing in some cases even longer, up to 100,000 miles. We'll see how long that lasts. The loan coverage is running 72 to 84 months at interest rates that have more than doubled since 2020. Looking back on that warranty, I would love to see what that 100,000 mile warranty actually covers. We'll have to do that in a video down the road. Anyways, the farmer, the contractor, the tradesman running crews, the guy who needs a capable work truck the same way he needs capable tools, not a lifestyle statement, not a status symbol, but as the thing his business runs on, is paying more for less reliability, financed longer at higher rates, with a warranty window that the manufacturer's own internal data suggests closes right before the failure pattern begins. That's not an accident of market forces. That's actually a system designed by people who will never use these trucks for work, optimized for people who will never feel the consequences of the decisions they made in those boardrooms.
The V8 wasn't retired because the planet needed it gone. It wasn't replaced because turbocharged technology was genuinely superior for the application these trucks are used for every single damn day. It went away because it cost more to build, generated less margin per unit, and was harder to use as a compliance tool in a regulatory system that was always more about paperwork than air quality. And the working man, the farmer, the contractor, the tradesman got handed the result of the boardroom calculation at full MSRP with the 7-year loan and a brochure that called it innovation. The government didn't take your V8. A CFO did. The government just handed him the excuse. Next video, we go through what happened after the sale. Brand by brand, failure by failure. The warranty stories that should make every person watching this genuinely angry. Not at a political party, not at a regulation, but at specific corporate decisions made by specific people who knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyways. If this landed, if you heard something in here that you've been thinking for years but never had the data to back up, the subscription button is how you make sure you don't miss what comes next. Drop your engine and model in the comment section. Tell me what you're running and what year, because the next video is going to get specific, and I want to know whose truck we're actually talking about. I'll see you at the next exit.